This is a continuation of building an e-commerce web application series. So we have been building upon this particular architecture so far. So in the last video, we started on front-end implementation. So we actually created the first part. So we have a web application running on S3 bucket that is served through CloudFront distribution and authentication and authorization through AWS Cognito. So last time we stopped at this particular page. So when you go to localhost and click login, you will be directed to the Cognito hosted zone. And then when you successfully log in, you will be redirect back to this localhost with authorization code here. And then behind the scene, Amplify will request all the tokens. So you can see it has requested all the access ID, refresh token, and also some user context. So today what we are going to do is we are going to create the bottom part. So which is nothing but talking to an API and getting some data from a DynamoDB table, right? We are going to create an API gateway and link and lambda function to be invoked when a request is coming to a certain path of the API. Then that lambda will talk to a DynamoDB table and get some product information and show it in the UI. So that's what we are going to do, guys. And we are not going to add any VPC endpoints also at this moment. So we will continue it in the upcoming videos. And also I will show you one of the ways where you can maintain your Lambda codes. Basically, you can manage your Lambdas and AWS resources with AWS SAM, or you can use serverless framework. But today we are going to use an AWS Express wrapper. That means you can write your backend like an Express application, and the Express wrapper will convert those logics into Lambda functions. Alright, so let's get started. Now, before we start, I want you to install this certain extension in Visual Studio Code, right? So this is AWS Amplify API Extension, which will really make your life easy, suggesting different code snippet from Amplify. So you don't have to go to Amplify website and copy paste different codes like I have been doing recently. Okay, now let's add our backend. If you go to Amplify website, under API guides, you should see API. Just click this, and this is the API documentation. So basically, you can create GraphQL endpoints or REST endpoints. So I'm going to use REST in this example. So if you want me to do GraphQL example, please let me know in the comment section, right? So you can simply click here, Angular using REST. Click this one, so that will take you to the REST documentation. So it's very easy, just a matter of following the instruction. So basically we need to add the API. So let me go to my Visual Studio Code. So far we have added auth. Now let's add API as well. So how do you add it? Very easy. You can type amplify add API. So now it's going to ask me a series of questions. So first we have to choose the type of backend or the API endpoint. So it's basically REST. Now select REST and hit enter. And friendly name for your resources, we'll call it eBuy API, and provide a path. So it's going to create an endpoint or the path for me right now. So let's create products endpoint. You can actually add other endpoints after this is created as well. So for now, let's create slash products endpoint, and it will create slash product API endpoint in the API gateway. Then it will ask, okay, which code it should run when a request hits this. You can either select an existing Lambda function or you can create a new Lambda function. So I'm going to create a new Lambda function here. So it's asking a little bit of information about the Lambda function. Okay, I will accept the default. Lambda function also, I will accept the default. Then it's going to ask me, do I need to create the DynamoDB table as well, or just the API and the Lambda, right? So in my case, I need to create the DynamoDB as well. So let's select the first option, integration with Amazon API Gateway and DynamoDB, and hit enter. Now it's going to ask me a bit information about the DynamoDB configuration. So I can again link already created DynamoDB table or create a new one. So in this case, let's create a new table, shall we? Okay, friendly name. This one is good for me. Table name, let's call it products. Hit enter. So now I can add columns to the table. Let me add a column called ID, and that is the primary key. So in DynamoDB, we can basically create a primary key using an hash key or with a combination of hash key and the sort key. So this time I'm going to use only the hash key. So we'll use ID as our hash key. So let me select string for the ID type because we might be using a GUID here. And it asks, would you like to add another column here? I don't want it, so I will say no. Then it's asking me to choose the partition key. So partition key, hash key. Now this is our main primary key. So I will select ID here. So now it asks me, do you want to have a sort key in your table? So at this moment, no. So my primary key is only consisted of the hash key. So it's not a combination of both the hash and the range key. Maybe we might need it sometimes later for other tables. So we'll use that at those points, right? So then it asks me about the indexes. Do I need a global secondary index? Nope. Okay. And now it asks, do I want to edit the local lambda function now? Shall we just see how it is look like? Let me say Y and hit enter. It's going to open up the lambda function. So that is located in Amplify backend functions and in the source directory app.js file. Now it has already opened it. Let me quickly show you guys. So this is our lambda function code. As you can see, it has created all the method stubs and some sample implementations as well. If I scroll it up, you can see it's using AWS Serverless Express middleware. Now, this is the one I told you earlier. You can create your Lambda functions and maintain your resources either using AWS SAM and you can use serverless framework. Oh, this is another option, serverless Express middleware. Now, this is quite handy if you already have an Express application and want to migrate it to a serverless nature of that or a Lambda functions. So this what basically does is it will create a wrapper around your Express application and create Lambda functions out of that, which is very handy. Let's see what else it has configured. So now let's scroll it a little bit down. You should see all the CRUD operation methods. For example, get method to list all the objects. So it has this sample implementation, which is very good because it has added all the authentication parts as well. Can you see this one? It will always check whether the user ID is present. Now this user ID is nothing but the Cognito ID. So when you're requesting for data in the DynamoDB, it will check whether the user ID or the Cognito ID is present, right? And you have other methods as well. You see get method for a single object and the put method. Well, then posting an object or basically creating a product, we can use this one. Deleting a product, we can use this one. So it has given us the basic CRUD operation implementations. We can of course change this one as well. Now let's go back to our wizard. Now it says okay, press enter to continue. Let's do. I hit enter. Now it's going to ask me, do I need to restrict the API access? Well, of course I do. I want to have authenticated endpoints as well as unauthenticated endpoints. That means authenticated users can access certain endpoints or basically all the endpoints, and unauthenticated users can also access some endpoints, like viewing all the products. So let's say yes. Then it asks me who should have access. So I will select the second option, authenticated and guest users, because I have both those users. Then it's going to ask me what kind of access do you want for authenticated users. For authenticated users, I need both read and write. For guest users, only read because they can only read the product information. So if they want to buy any product, they have to log in. Alright, so it asked me, do I need to add another part? For now, no. Okay, great. I think it has configured everything. Now it says, okay, use Amplify push to provision resources in your cloud. We'll do that. Amplify push. This will take few minutes, so I will pause the video right now and come back once it is completed. Alright guys, now it is completed. Now if you scroll up a little bit, I want to show one thing. So please make sure to accept when you ask this question. Are you sure you want to continue? So it's basically will ask, okay, we are going to configure or provision these resources for storage, a DynamoDB table, for function, a Lambda function, API, the E by API gateway. So these things will be created and our auth function, the Cognito user pool and Cognito identity pool. So it will update our identity pool. So with our unauthenticated user policies, etc. And hosting, there's no change. So just accept it, then it will start provisioning all the resources, updating and creating new ones, then that's it. Okay, great. All right. Now, if you go to AWS export.js in source folder, this particular file, you will see it has added many other records. You see DynamoDB table schemes and cloud logic. So this is basically our API gateway. So it has added this new configuration. But in AWS export.ts file, it is not yet updated. So if you can remember, this only get updated when you run or build your project. But let me simply come here and copy this code here and go to ts file here and replace everything with this so we can run it locally and see. Alright, if you go to AWS console real quick and into the DynamoDB console, and also let's open API gateway console as well, both, and click tables. In DynamoDB, you should see our products table has been created. And also in the API gateway, you should see our new API is created. If you click into that, you should see our slash products endpoint is created as well. So we have our API gateway and the DynamoDB, and also the Lambda is also configured. Very nice. So let's try to add some records into the DynamoDB and try to access it from our web application, shall we? So I will go to DynamoDB and click into the products, items. So there's no items at this moment, and I'm going to create item here. Let's set the string value 100 and hit plus and insert another column or field basically, and we'll call it name and we'll name it camera, and let's add another field kind DSLR. I think that should be enough. So let me add this record. Yeah, this record is added. Let's add another item. So let's call it 200 and another field name laptop, and another column, let's say brand Apple. I will add that. Okay. So since this is DynamoDB, you can skip different columns for different records. You can do all sort of things. It's not going to complain or anything as such, right? As long as we have this primary key ID field set up, other fields are optional. So let's try to query this data, shall we? So, so I'm going back to the API documentation, and if I scroll down, you see using the API client, right? So they have given me an example as well. Basically, you can use the API to get information. You can say API.get, the API name, and we can find this information from the configurations and the path and some header information and other related information for the request, headers, response, query strings, etc. Right? So let's try to use this. So I will go to my application here, and let me just go to app folder, and I will create a new component. So let's call it home. So I will type ng-gc home dash dash spec force. So that will create the home component. Here we have it. And if you go to home component.ts, so this is the selector. Let me copy that. I will go to our app component.html, and under app now, let me add that. All right. So now let's use our home component here, the HTML. So I'm going to add a button, right? Let's say get products, right? And for the click event, I'm going to attach and handle function get products. That's fine. So let's add this function in the TS file, get products, and inside this, I'm going to copy paste this API.get code here. Alright, so it's going to complain some of these things are not defined. So let's add the API or import the API from Amplify. You can do that if you go to the documentation and scroll a little bit up somewhere here. There you have it. There you go. And I will just copy this, paste it, and I don't need the Amplify because we have already configured it, just needed this API part. So you see this quickly is gone, and then API name, path, and init. So API name, so this information we can find if you go to AWS export.ts or JS file, you see the API name under AWS Cloud Logic Custom. It's E by API. Copy that and paste it in here. I will directly add it here. And the path, let's check that. Well, you can't find it here, but if you go to Amplify folder into the backend, into the function, you can see our Express wrapper function. If you go to app.js and scroll up a little bit, you will see the path here, slash products. So let me copy that as well into here. So we are just testing this. And for my init, well, just pass a empty object. Maybe we might need these attributes as well. Let me just simply copy these parameters, additional parameters, and let's create a variable called params. And as an object, let me paste it in here. Query parameters also, let's remove that. So it will be empty object altogether. Okay, great. So now this params object, we can refer it here by this dot params. Good. So we'll put a debugger here, so that will stop at this point, or if there is an error, let's check that as well. Right. Let's try to see if everything is working. Let me open up the console and do ng-serve here. Okay, now it's built and I will visit localhost 4200. You can see my get products button here. I will open up a console as well and see if there are any issues. Go to the console. Okay, now this is some bootstrap issue. Don't worry about that. Go to network. And now let's try to see if our credentials are still existing. Yep, our local storage is still here. Let's click get products. Oh, we got an error here. Alright guys, so we got a 404 error. That means something is not found. So let's see what we missed. Now I'm at Amplify folder inside the backend folder, and I went into the function folder, and inside src double click on app.js file, which is our lambda code. Right. So we want to get all the products, right? So that's what we used this particular function, app.get path. So that means this one, products. And you see it has added this hash key path, and if we see what this hash means, it's about slash colon and partition key, which is ID. So which is not what we really want. So our path should be just slash product. So I'm going to remove that plus hash key. And if I scroll up a little bit, you should see the table name is this particular value. But if we go to our DynamoDB, our table name is product. So this is why the 404 error. So it cannot find that particular table, hence that 404 error. So let me just change this to products. So while we are here, let's look at this code. So the main idea for us is to get all the products when they click get all products button, right? So no matter he's logged in or not logged in, we want to show all the products, right? So if you look at this code, you can see it's making a DynamoDB query for the table name, and there's a condition. So what is this condition? In this condition, it's basically check whether the user ID is present. For example, you know that when you logged in to the application, there's this user ID that is coming from the Cognito. So it always checks in the products table if the items contains the user ID. If and only if user's present ID or the Cognito ID is presented in the item itself, it will return that particular item from the products table. But let me just go to our DynamoDB table. So these IDs are not user IDs, right? So basically, with that query, it won't return any of these records because these records do not have Cognito ID. So for now, we don't want that level of security. That means this record level of security for our get products function, because we want to show all the items that is available in our e-commerce site for all the users, no matter they are logged in or logged out. For example, let's say there's a user who logged in and this he buys a particular product, then we can create another different table and add that user's Cognito ID as a column here. Afterwards, we can add that condition, okay, for this user show only the products that he has bought. So for that particular scenario, this makes sense. But for now, we don't need it. So let's take that out altogether. So I'm going to remove all this condition part and I'm going to use DynamoDB scan instead of query. Well, we know DynamoDB scan is a very slow operation as it's scanning all the records in the table. But for now, we are going to use it because later on we are going to change this to Elasticsearch rather than scanning the DynamoDB table for products when the users visit our site. So for now, let's keep scan just to check whether everything is working fine. And I will remove this key condition because scan doesn't need any key condition. All right, so I think that's it. Let's do a quick deployment and I will take another tab and type Amplify Publish and hit enter. Now let me fast forward it and come back. All right, the operation is completed. Now let's go back to our site and do a refresh. And now let's click Get Products again. So the first option request is successful and the second one is also successful. So let's inspect the response. Let me just type response here. And in the response data, you should see the data. There you go. Apple ID is 200 and it's a laptop, 100 DSLR camera. So those are the records in our table here, these two records. Very nice. So now we have set up our backend so we can write our queries. So we created the API gateway and we created a Lambda and DynamoDB. So now we can use Amplify to query this backend database and get the results. So what's next? So next, let's do another interesting one. So as I previously mentioned, we are not going to use DynamoDB scan. So when the users are logged into the application, instead we are going to use our Elasticsearch. So what we are going to do is let's create a DynamoDB stream between our table and the Elasticsearch service. So whenever an item is added to the DynamoDB, it will index a record in the Elasticsearch cluster asynchronously, which is a really good pattern where we utilize the event-driven computing. So we are going to use DynamoDB stream. And there is a really good, highly scalable architectural pattern. So let's see how that can be done using a DynamoDB stream in the next video. I'll see you again and thanks for watching.